And you're very welcome along to the NFL pod here from OTB. We're going to get to Cian Fahey a little bit later on. We're also going to get to our resident New Orleans Saints fans if we can convince Sue to come on the air and speak about the unspeakable, the worst call in the history of professional sports. Hasn't quite been able to talk about it just yet. We tried to get her on the show on Monday, but she refused point blank to speak to us for fear that she might libel a few people, and that could have ended up costing us a lot of money. So we'll see if Sue makes an appearance, and we'll let you know how her picks have gone over the last couple of weeks. In the meantime, Sam Monson is with us from PFF. Sam, how are you?
Doing good, Ger. How about you?
Is it the worst call in professional sports history?
I don't know about the worst call. There's a lot of bad calls all the way along. It's a pretty bad one. I find it pretty interesting just how over the top the Saints are going about this. Michael Thomas pulling out a subsection of the rules that gives the NFL essentially the power to overturn or restart a game at that particular moment, which is a rule that basically was created to stop people from the sideline tackling players mid-play. But the Saints in particular, if you just cast your minds back to 2009, there's some pretty dodgy things.
Explain exactly, the wages of sin or death, I think, is the appropriate words that you might use in this case. And they sinned pretty egregiously for two years in a row for two things to happen, like the miracle of Minnesota or miracle of Minneapolis, whichever it was, last year, and then this to happen. There's something bad must be very recently in their past. What was that, Sam, for anybody who's unaware?
Well, there was the whole bounty gate. Obviously, everything has to have a gate at the end of it. But suspensions handed down, essentially a fairly extensive system of putting bounties on players in terms of injury, going out to specifically injure guys. The 2009 NFC Championship game against the Minnesota Vikings had a ton of dodgy calls in it, including a pretty phantom pass interference in overtime, I think, to Ben Lieber. Brett Favre essentially taken out of that game repeatedly with dodgy hits that were typically never called. Of all the franchises to be, throwing around things like, we need to replay this because this is horrendous, the Saints probably can't be throwing the stones around.
Yeah, notwithstanding the rank hypocrisy that we're seeing from them, they've got a case. It was a pretty bad call. Now, it's hard to kind of understand how in this day and age stuff like that happens. I wonder if you could go back and be in Sean Payton's head at that moment that the call happens. Do you sit down on the field? Do you throw the challenge flag anyway? Do you get the guy who runs the big screen to just show it on a loop until something happens? Go on strike. What can you do?
I mean, nothing, essentially. The NFL, what's really crazy is that the NFL doesn't have a system like rugby where you can fix that real time, right? Because the whole thing is so connected now that Peyton can get on the phone the second they're out of the game, and the NFL league office can say, yeah, we blew that one, sorry. They see it right away. The New York is connected to that stadium, particularly in the playoffs. There is literally no reason that they can't buzz in and say, guys, you screwed that one up, throw the flag.
Yeah.
And I get the idea that you might not want to have them have the same access to essentially big screen replays the way they do in rugby. I get the idea of not wanting the official to be making decisions based off the TV that's showing him and the crowd the play that's going on, because then you open yourself up to the idea of the crowd is making a hell of a lot of noise over this. It must be bad. I'm going to throw the flag. But if New York is empowered to phone, dial in, stop the game, buzz the referee and say, guys, this one is definitely a screw up. You need to throw a flag on that play. Everybody wins. It's the right call, and it doesn't make things any more convoluted than it is now.
I'm generally of the view that they get these things right with a bit of time in the NFL. Whenever there's a massive outcry about a specific rule, at least there's a standing rules committee. They go off and have their off-season meeting. There's a load of other gossip that comes from those meetings, but they change the rules to make them better. The catch seemed to get better this year than in previous years. I'm obviously not working for a stats-based organisation who keeps track of stuff like this, but it definitely felt like there were fewer egregious no catches, or the whole football motion thing. They tidied it up a little bit. And yet, when it comes to something as era-defining as this moment was, they're miles and miles away from getting it right.
Yeah, I think the catch rule finally did get tidied up after years of being a complete and total mess. I think they'll probably change this rule. I think they'll make pass interference a reviewable play because of this, just because it was such an egregious screw up on the biggest stage possible. Short of being in the Super Bowl, this literally essentially defined a game. If the Saints had gotten that call, they would have had like a 98% chance in terms of win probability. They basically had the game sewn up completely at that point. So we're literally talking about one blown call basically being the difference between winning and losing in the game. Now, obviously, the Saints had a shot in overtime anyway, so it didn't lose them the game as much as just prevent them from securing the win. But you are talking about the difference between winning and then that win being up in the air, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna change that in the offseason.
Yeah, and that makes sense. The other thing that everybody's been talking about since is why not just give Kansas City the opportunity to have one go with the ball, give them one possession after the Patriots score a touchdown. Look, in this part of the world, it just seems ludicrous that the coin toss, a touchdown, it's game over. Like, that's not that hard to fix. There was this mad debate about, the college system is broken, and actually the team who wins the toss only wins 47% of the time, so therefore this is not really an issue. And actually it is an issue. It's not fair. Give him the ball once, and if he scores a touchdown, go again. And that's it. Yeah,
that's the kind of problem. So people use those macro numbers and say, well, there's no problem. And you're like, well, I mean, there is. It's just not it's not in every game, right? It's specific games that it comes up and is a distinctly unfair proposition. And they're games like this. It's games where offense is taking over and then you deny one offense the chance with the ball in overtime. That's basically the fundamental point of it. You can't, as a league, start pushing for more and more offense, more and more points, more and more yards, and then decide in one drive in overtime, all right, now we have to care about defense. Well, the defense can just make a stop. They have the chance to play as well. But you've spent the waking moment prior to that trying to minimize the effect that a defense can have. So you've fundamentally eroded what they're capable of doing. Now, there are arguments against this idea of sort of extending the overtime, this theoretically endless system of, more and more plays where the NFL is trying to position themselves as a player safety kind of league. You don't want to be adding more and more plays on top of that. The college system does have its own problem. Honestly, our colleague Mike Renner had the best idea I've heard about this, which is you essentially create a penalty shootout with 2-point plays. Each team gets 5 shots of a 2-point conversion play, from the 2, and you see where you go from there. It's still an offensive play. It's still a football play. You're not deciding the game by, penalty field goals or anything, but you're minimizing the number of plays you're asking these guys to play in overtime. I like that idea.
So you'd have, you'd guarantee everybody 5 goals, and whoever has the most at the end of those 5 goals wins.
Yeah, literally set it up like a penalty shootout in soccer or whatever. Everybody gets 5 shots of converting a 2-point play, and then you go to sudden death. Yeah,
or you could go to sudden death. This would be at the end of the game as opposed to going into overtime at all. Maybe you need 5. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
In place of overtime.
Yeah. I don't know. I still think I don't really understand what the problem with the college game is. Everybody gets the same number of possessions. Whoever has the most points wins, and when somebody stops scoring, that's game over.
Right, but nobody wants 7 overtimes and however many plays that's going to add on to the end of the game.
Well, I guess the only time that would ever happen is in the postseason. You limit it to 2 possessions each in and maximum of 15 minutes, 1 quarter in the regular season, and then if we have 7 periods of overtime, it's going to be one of the greatest things that's ever happened in the postseason.
Yeah, I think there's a number of ways you can fix it, but I think we should all agree on the idea that the end of a game like that, where Mahomes and Brady are dueling back to back, every time one of them gets a possession, they're scoring, and then one of those guys doesn't get a chance to answer in the postseason. It's fundamentally unfair, whether or not in the macro level of things, the coin toss is producing a 50-50 win or not.
Exactly. I think that's the case, especially because it does define how people think now about the Chiefs and their season, which is madness as well, because I don't know, so Andy Reid is apparently fired as defensive coordinator, and maybe that's fair enough. It's mad that he was great last week and this week he's not good enough. maybe you should have sacked him last week or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the sacking was necessarily always inevitable, but obviously the defense has been the thing that's been holding that team back, and they were particularly bad in that game. They didn't adjust anything the Patriots were doing. They weren't aggressive enough at the right times. This idea that, we've talked all season long that, when your offense is as potent and explosive as the Chiefs' offense is, you don't need a good defense, but you do need a defense to be able to make a stop once. Show up just one time, one drive, kill a possession, and then you get the ball back, and that changes everything. And they had two different shots to do that. The drive at the very end of the game where Brady walks down and scores a touchdown, and then the overtime drive where they put them in third and long 3 different times and couldn't get couldn't force them to fourth down on any of those occasions. Big third down conversions every single time. I mean, that's pretty inexcusable for a defense.
The major caveat, obviously, when you have an explosive offense like that, they come out, they maybe get a first down, they throw, they make 50 yards, they get maybe one more first down, they get the touchdown, and it's done like that. Whereas the Pats defense is actually generally sitting on the sideline, getting ready for when they need to make their stop. And your defense is out on the field of play, getting hammered by those bruisers that Belichick has decided is the way he's going to beat you, by keeping you on the field for 12 minutes and running the ball up your gut again and again and again and again. I have a little bit of sympathy with the fact that they must have been absolutely shattered.
Yeah, there's some of that to it. I don't think this is the best example of a game where that's really been a factor. I think if you go back to the Super Bowl against the Falcons, like the end of that game was definitely the reason those guys were struggling so badly. They played like 100 snaps on defense in that game. They were absolutely wrecked. And that was a huge part of that comeback, was that the Falcons defense was just completely exhausted. I don't think that was as big a factor in this game. It probably, made some difference, but they had been running some rotation up front. There were new bodies coming in. This shouldn't have been a complete capitulation the way it was.
Yeah. I was trying to check the stats there. They were on the field for 97 snaps, the defense. And I look, the other thing is that people are questioning Andy Reid, and there was a few decisions where he just didn't seem to be able to take time off the clock when he needed to take time off the clock. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. I mean, he has created one of the best and most exciting offenses that has ever existed. In Mahomes, he's managed to take a talent that a lot of people passed on and turn him into definitely one of the most exciting athletes in world sport at the moment. And so it would be really, I think, it would just be sad if that guy gets no credit for what's happened this year, and it's all about the mistakes that he makes, and that's how the story comes to be thought of.
Yeah, I think he does get a lot of credit. I mean, it is going to sort of tarnish his legacy a little bit in terms of we've now taken a couple of bites at the cherry and come up short against Bill Belichick in key situations for Andy Reid, and that's going to be part of what defines his legacy. But I think a lot of people recognize quite the impact he's made with Patrick Mahomes in this offense overall, the scheme work that he's done, the creativity that he's been able to create with this team. I think he's getting a lot of credit, but ultimately he's just one more body along the road of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady marching endlessly to success.
Yeah, I like, because Mahomes is so young and so brilliant, there is a sense that no matter what happens with this Chiefs team, that they will be back and that they will be a force to be reckoned with. They don't seem to have massive brewing cap issues anywhere just yet, until obviously they have to pay Mahomes $200 million guaranteed in 4 years' time, or whenever that is, 3 years' time at this point. So is it to be taken for granted that they will definitely be back at this same level next year, do you think?
I don't think you can take it for granted, but they're in a good position to succeed. There's a lot of room for improvement on this team. Obviously, the defense struggling as much as it did. They've got a guy like Dee Ford, who's their primary pass rusher this year. He's a free agent at the moment, so you have to decide whether you bring him back, how you bring him back, whether it's a franchise tag or a long-term deal. But there's a lot of talent that could be added to this team. And then you have the question of exactly what Mahomes will look like next year, just because this season was so utterly ridiculous. 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, numbers off the charts in terms of some of the things he was doing. Now, is he that much of an outlier always, or will he come back down to earth a little bit? Will he regress towards the mean? And if he does, how much does the difference between 2018 Mahomes and a little bit worse make a difference to that offense? It's going to slow it down a little bit. How much will that have an impact? Because we're talking about an offense that was good enough to be one of the best ever and drag this team to an AFC Championship game. If Mahomes regresses a little bit to just being good, is it that explosive still?
Yeah. Was there anything that the Patriots did that would have surprised the Chiefs? It felt a lot like this was precisely the game plan, that it was signposted relatively well over the last couple of weeks, and that notwithstanding that, even when you know what they're trying to do to you, the Patriots' genius is in that the fact that they can still do what they want to you.
Yeah, I don't think anything would have surprised them. Certainly what they did in coverage, I think, would have been what the Chiefs expected to see, which is, double team Tyreek Hill, essentially take him out of the play with two guys on every play, single cover Sammy Watkins up with Stephon Gilmore. But Travis Kelce was the one kind of X factor there, and he just didn't win, essentially. I think that was the biggest shock for the Chiefs, is that Kelce has been this dynamic mismatch weapon all the way through, his career, really. And he got relatively favorable matchups in this game and wasn't able to take advantage of them. I think the one area that may have kind of screwed up the Chiefs a little bit was what the Patriots were doing with their pass rush. They were able to scheme a lot of free rushes up the middle and make Mahomes start to try and escape out of that pocket. And the Patriots are very good at stopping guys escaping. They're very good at maintaining contain with their pass rush. And if they're able to flush a guy by getting pressure up the middle, they're really good at bringing him down rather than letting him get outside. And that's where Mahomes does all of his damage. So you saw a few of those plays where Mahomes had to back up, try and turn away from the initial pressure, and just couldn't get outside of the edge rush to get to the edge where he does all of his real damage.
Yeah, it did strike me that the Patriots defense has taken a step forward, if anything, from last year when Matt Patricia was the defensive coordinator and is now gone, and the new defensive coordinator seems to be on his way out the door. I'm not sure I'd be hiring the defensive coordinator of the Patriots, given that, it seems whoever rolls in is just tapping into the human version of the brain that is Bill Belichick. Are we being unfair? Is there something specifically different that we can put down to Flores this year?
I think the reason that this Bill Belichick coaching tree typically doesn't succeed outside of New England is because there isn't a system. There's not one. If you look at various other coaching trees, there's a guy that runs an aggressive one gap 3-4 system, and that's what he does. And then there's another guy that runs the sort of Tampa 2 variant system, and that's what he does. And there's various little things that hang off the back of that, but they have a system that they can package up in a book and take elsewhere and teach to everybody else. The Patriots don't really have a system. They change things on a given week to win the game, to put out on the field the best possible game plan for the upcoming opposition, and it's largely Bill Belichick driven. I think that makes it really difficult for coaches to sort of package up this system and take it with them, because it's all specifics. It's all, what are we going to do for this opposing team? And they will change completely what they do on a given week if they think it's the best way of playing. Typically they play a lot of man coverage, and they do like to use this kind of contain with their edge rushers rather than generate pressure with those guys and sell out and let the quarterback escape. So there's a couple of little things that they like to do, but everything else is game plan specific, and it's very difficult for those guys to take that with them.
Which basically means that Belichick is the genius on both sides of the ball, but that he has found in Brady the perfect partner for this, because it seems as if Brady has a similar football brain and is also able, at the line of scrimmage, to diagnose exactly what's happening.
Yeah, he is. And I think the other thing about Brady is he's an incredibly patient quarterback. Most other quarterbacks, you can almost force them into making mistakes by taking away the deep thing and basically forcing them to kill you with 1,000 paper cuts. Tom Brady will do that, and he doesn't care. If the game plan is for him to hand the ball off 40 times to running backs, and that's the way to win, he'll do that, and you won't have a problem with it. If the game plan is for him to never pass the ball more than 5 yards downfield, and that's how you're going to win because they can't cover those routes, he'll do that as well. And most quarterbacks won't. Most quarterbacks get frustrated and they get kind of itchy and they want to make the big play, and eventually they just snap and take a shot that they shouldn't take. Brady very rarely does that, and I think that's part of why he's so good. But you're right, they're very good at identifying what the thing is to run pre-snap. It's very hard to take away everything they want to do because he has the freedom to, kill the play, go to a run play, to do all those kinds of things. And you basically have to force them into just making enough mistakes for you to win on the other side of the ball. And the Chiefs almost did that, but just couldn't come up big in the final couple of drives.
Does it feel like this is coming to an end? I mean, the regular season, people were saying that Brady looked a little bit gun-shy, that he was trying to get out of the way, he didn't want to get hit, he was getting the ball out of his hands a little bit too quick, and it was keeping the opposition in games that you felt like in previous seasons the Patriots might have blown teams out, but maybe the team just wasn't there at that stage. It doesn't really feel like anything we're seeing at the moment is suggestive of a significant enough slide that Brady couldn't come back at least and see how he plays or feels at the start of next season.
No, not at all. I mean, if you factor in the postseason, Brady's PFF grade is now number 3 in the league behind only Breeze and Mahomes. He's playing not quite as well as he played the past few years, but his play the past few years has been absolutely insane. Like, it's been maybe the best play we've seen since PFF has been grading. So the past sort of 13 years, the best we've seen has been the past couple of seasons of Brady. So the idea that he's a bit worse than that is inevitable, right? That was completely unsustainable play. But he hasn't, fallen off this cliff that other quarterbacks have hit in their 40s. You think of Brett Favre, you think of Peyton Manning. That certainly hasn't happened to Brady. He's playing a little bit worse in the past, but he hasn't hit that wall yet. What is interesting is that that wall does feel like an inevitable thing, and it's not necessarily any one way. They just all do some way it hits them. Manning obviously had that neck injury that kind of debilitated him physically, and that happened very quickly. Like, he came back, he retaught himself how to play given his new limitations, and then he just hit this physical wall where everything fell off a cliff. Favre was a completely different type of wall, though, because I think Brett Favre could go out there tomorrow and still have a top 10 NFL arm. That's not what happened to him. His physical tools didn't diminish. What happened with Favre is that his body just started to break down. So he'd been this NFL Iron Man for 15 years, and it was impossible to break the man. And then suddenly he reached this age where when you hit him, things started to break, and he just couldn't repair himself in time. But Brady's probably a mix of the two, in that he hasn't had the physical decline that Manning has, but unlike Favre, he takes far fewer hits. So he hasn't necessarily had the injury problems yet. But you do feel that at some point, it's inevitable that this is going to finish. He's going to hit this cliff the same as everybody else, and it's going to happen quickly.
But it could be a few years away. Yeah, that point you make about him not getting hit, that's the key point. Like, in the playoffs, he's barely been pressured at all in 2 full games.
Right. He's got the ball out of his hands on average in under 2.2 seconds, which is ridiculous. And it's basically too fast for a pass rush to be able to get any kind of pressure on him. The Chiefs, I think, got pressure in 6 snaps in that game, which is ridiculous. It's completely unplayable. You just can't stop a quarterback doing that. So yeah, he's among the best at mitigating the pressure that comes to him, and minimizing the amount of pressure that gets there. And because he could be at the point that Brett Favre was at in the end of his career right now, but if he doesn't get the hit, we're not going to find out. It's going to take a specific hit to injure him in a way that wouldn't have injured him in the past, to kind of put him down in the way that it did for Favre. But if he's not taking those hits, we may not find out about it for the next 2-3 years.
We're obviously 10 days out from the Super Bowl. What's your sense at the moment about what you think is going to happen before kind of the proper analysis begins in your head? What's your gut telling you at the moment?
I think it's going to be pretty tough for the Rams. The Patriots are going to come out, obviously, with two weeks to prepare. They're going to have an excellent game plan for this offense. And, the Rams have just struggled a little bit recently at kind of coming up with a plan B. We talked heading into the championship games that they demonstrated at least some version of it against the Cowboys. They'd been prepared to run the ball heavily, But, they struggled against the Saints to get an awful lot going. Jared Goff had to bail them out with a lot of big throws to kind of cling on to that game. But by and large, they were struggling to get it done. The stuff that they'd done all the way through the year just wasn't working. The Saints were better keyed in on it. They were stopping the jet motion. They were shutting down the run inside. And I don't know that the Rams have enough answers in the bag of tricks when a team does have a full enough grasp of that offense. Now, the question for them would be, how much can their defense step it up? Because their defense kept them in that Saints game for long periods of it. And there is a lot of untapped potential in that defense. We saw guys like Aqib Talib makes a huge difference. And Ndamukong Suh has been playing better in the playoffs. Aaron Donald is pretty much unblockable. And they have the ability to get physical with Patriots receivers and kind of slow the ball coming out a little bit. So, my gut feeling says that the Rams defense basically needs to play an absolute stormer for them to have a shot on this one.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, the line opened up with the Rams like 1.5 favourites in some places. The Patriots have seen all the money so far, and they're now -3. So that feels about right. And actually, it feels like they could probably win. I don't know. At the moment, it feels like they're going to win this game relatively comfortably in the end. It felt a little bit like something weird happened to that Rams team with Gurley when there was the 2 drops, essentially. The first one which leads to the interception, and then the second one is like, ooh, something's wrong here. And I don't know. It didn't feel like he was benched for injury reasons. It felt like he was being punished for big drops in the championship game.
I don't even think it was the drops. I think he also blew 2 protections. He got run over one time, did get Goff hit, and he blew another protection, gave up a pressure as well. That's the thing that NFL coaches hate. You see rookie running backs, they're usually not playing on third down, and the reason they're not playing on third down is because the coach doesn't trust them to play with blitz pickups. He doesn't trust them to pick up a linebacker who's going to get their quarterback killed, and therefore they don't play, even though they can be, weapons in the passing game. If the coach doesn't trust them to pick up the blitz, they're just not on the field. And Gurley was one of those guys earlier in his career. He was playing a lot, but almost never in obvious passing situations. They took him off the field. And obviously the drops, I think, were a part of it, but I think he also blew those 2 protections, and they said, right, we're sitting him down. We trust C.J. Anderson more to pick up the blitz in this game, and that's important.
Yeah, and he was pretty good at it, actually. Anything else from the games last weekend, Strikey, that was something we should have talked about?
No, I think generally those 2 games were both officiated terribly, which is actually kind of impressive since they create these all-star officiating crews to do it. It's kind of remarkable that they both managed to be that bad given this all-pro kind of crew status they had.
Yeah, maybe they'll fix it, maybe they won't. I see John Elway's already given out about the fact that there's too much replay in the game and any more might be a blight on it. So we'll see if they can get that change through. Sam, great stuff. Enjoy the build-up. Thanks a million.
Cool, thanks, Ger.
It's Sam Monson there from PFF. You can get him at PFF_Sam for more details on that. We'll show you the results from last weekend before we get Cian up next. So by now, you probably, most of you have seen this. The Patriots beat the Chiefs 37-31 at Arrowhead. And the Rams, we didn't even talk about Greg Zuerlein. Poor Greg Zuerlein not getting that much credit for, absolutely nailing 2 very, very high-pressure kicks. 26-23 was the score. The first kick to tie it up and send it to overtime definitely had a little bit of a fade on it. It did look like it was being pushed wide right before it just straightens up. It's one of those when you're neutral, you're like, do I want this to go to overtime, or could I just go to bed now? But as it turned out, it was pretty glad it went to overtime. Right, we'll get the thoughts of our resident in-house New Orleans Saints fan, Sue, in just a little while. But in the meantime, I think we're almost ready to go and join Cian Fahey, who joins us this week. Cian, good afternoon, good evening to you. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. What did you make of last weekend? What are your kind of things now that when you think back to the 2 games that you think, that we need to talk about that?
Maybe this is just my reputation at this point, but it slants a little bit negative. I kind of like, at this time of year, you want every team at their very best, and it felt like we did not get the Saints, the Rams, or the Chiefs best, and we got the Patriots best, and which is a testament to the Patriots and who they are and who they've been for a long time. But for the first thing, I just want to focus on that Rams-Saints game. Like, Todd Gurley, very clearly, that's like the worst game of his career, I'm guessing. He's obviously not 100% healthy. He opens up the game with that drop pass that becomes an interception. Then he drops another pass on third down that would have extended a drive. And then in the third quarter, we're asking if he's been benched or not because CJ Anderson's just playing all the time. And Todd Gurley is the most important part of the Rams offense. So we have an NFC Championship game where Todd Gurley is an afterthought, where he's not a focal point at all. That kind of took away from the spectacle of the Rams offensive side. And then, Goff did enough for them to win, I think is the best way to put it. But really, he made that one deep throw to Brandon Cooks down the left sideline, very good throw, excellent play. Then he made 2 plays at the end on those bootlegs where he got the ball out quickly. But those plays weren't exactly spectacular either. They weren't massively difficult. It's just a low bar we gauge Goff with. So from the Rams offensive side, I felt a bit kind of left wanting a little bit more. And it was the same on the Saints side because Drew Brees, so they gave Drew Brees week 17 off in the regular season. Teddy Bridgewater played that game. And then they had a bye week after that. And since then, Drew Brees has just looked completely uncomfortable. He's looked like a shadow of himself. He has never had that timing down. He's never had any rhythm. He hasn't been able to hit a single deep throw in those 2 games against the Eagles and the Rams. So it was a little bit disappointing in terms of not everyone being at their best. And Sean Payton didn't give the ball to Kamara, didn't give the ball to Ingram enough. And I was kind of sat there thinking, where are these great teams we saw during the regular season?
You forget about the Ted Ginn catch that the cornerback really should have just turned around and batted down, but tried to catch, go straight through his hands. And it's well, that's the winning of the game, you think. I mean, that was literally the winning of the game. But other than that, I buy the point on Brees. We were just talking about quarterbacks hitting the wall and at what point, if ever, it's going to happen to Tom Brady. But it might be possible that Drew Brees has hit that wall and that team's Super Bowl window is now closed.
Well, the difference between Brady and Brees is that Brady has always existed in the short and intermediate level. So if you have Brady working the short throws, it's not taxing him physically, and he's catching the ball and releasing it all the time. He's getting it out very quickly. It's not going to impact him as much as he gets older. Brees has never been that guy. Brees has to mix everything up a little bit, and this is where Sean Payton kind of has a very big responsibility for this game specifically. If we go back to the regular season, Sean Payton and Brees went on a road, went into Cincinnati and put up 50 points on the Bengals. And they did this with a very specific game plan, a game plan that would have worked against the Rams defense because they're a very similar defense. Very quickly, if you look at the Bengals defense, their strengths are 2 first-round cornerbacks on the outside. Kirkpatrick isn't as good as Jackson, but they're both very, very talented players. Decent safeties, massive weaknesses at linebacker. Geno Atkins in the middle of the Bengals defense is about 90% of what Aaron Donald is in the middle of the Rams defense. So the Saints went into that game and they leveraged everything off the linebackers. So if Alvin Kamara was given a one-on-one matchup, he would throw the ball to Kamara. Kamara would catch it, turn around, run away from the linebacker, easy big gain. If they moved their safety down into the box to try and give the linebackers less space to cover, you look to Michael Thomas outside immediately on the short and intermediate routes. They did not do that in this game. They came out in this game and they didn't run the ball. They didn't look to attack specific matchups. They kind of just ran a very bland, a very kind of in the script offense where you also had settling for field goals early, which isn't something I have a major problem with, but I do have a problem with bringing in Taysom Hill. That has not worked all year. It's worked running the ball, but you're basically taking out a Hall of Fame passer, even if he's struggling, whatever reason, you're taking out a Hall of Fame passer and you're bringing in Taysom Hill to throw the ball. It just doesn't work. Taysom Hill had that one throw to Alvin Kamara in the flat where Kamara drops the ball, but the ball is behind him. It's on his back hip. It should be in front of him and he should walk in for a touchdown. And that little difference is at the end of the game, it's a one-score game. You go to overtime, that little difference can be huge. Obviously, it's not that simple, but it changes the whole trajectory of the game. And it's just everything with the Saints was kind of frustrating because it felt a lot like they beat themselves. I know they've got the easy out where they're going to say, hey, the officials screwed us and they cost us, but they should never have been in that position. No,
they actually killed the Rams in the first 15, 20, 25 minutes, and it should have been game over.
Yeah, it was I think it was 9-3, or it was something it was only a one-score game. And again, I come back to that point where the Rams didn't have Gurley, so they were lost. They didn't get a first down until I think midway through the second quarter.
What? I don't think Gurley was injured. I think he was being punished.
I tend to think his knee is not right. I know that has nothing to do with him dropping the ball. Him dropping the ball is a separate issue. But if you go back to that Cowboys game, even Anderson was getting a bigger share of the workload initially. Gurley is still very capable. He's still clearly healthy enough to play. But I think you'll see a very, very different running back in the Super Bowl. You give him that extra 2 weeks, I think he'll be back to 100%. And as a running back, when you're when your explosiveness is a huge part of your success, that's going to impact you. And he's also someone who has had an ACL tear in the past. So when he has a knee issue, it's a bigger thing than just some normal, fully healthy person having a knee issue.
Okay, let's try and make the case for what the Rams will be doing this week and what they'll be looking at the Patriots over the last 2 games and going, oh yeah, no, actually that's okay. We can handle that. We understand exactly what you're doing there. We know that you're bringing these big guys and your offensive line is impregnable, but you haven't seen what we have, baby. We've got Ndamukong Suh and this other guy who's actually like the best player in football. So screw you, we're coming after your boy.
Yeah, I'm not sure have Sean McVay and Bill Belichick faced off yet at this. I was trying to think, have we seen them play each other? And I don't think we have. And obviously, Sean McVay is the big star, young quarterback, young coach, and Bill Belichick's the established coach. And he kind of reminded everyone this week that he's the most important part of any team in a single game matchup, because what he did to the Chiefs was just simply phenomenal. But if you're talking specifically defense versus offense, I think for the Rams, it's going to be all about just how disruptive Donald can be. I think you'll see the Patriots change up their offense completely again. They went from running the ball 46 times this week with Sony Michel, and look, they threw the ball 47 times too, but most of those, I think 22 of those throws came after the 6-minute point in the fourth quarter. So their game plan was very clearly, we're just going to run the ball. It was not looking to it was not looking to be balanced with the pass and the run. It was, we're going to run the ball and we'll pass when we have to. So in this game, I think it will be completely different. They will try and spread it out, and it will be a lot of Edelman quick throws, a lot of Hogan and even working quick throws. The problem for the Patriots is, like, Gronk for a lot of that Chiefs game was just a blocker. He made 2 plays at the end of the game. He caught a slant where Daniel Sorensen misread the play. He should have stopped him before the first down line, but it was 3rd and 10 as well, so it would have been a key play. But he read it wrong, so Gronk was able to beat Eric Berry, catch the ball inside and go past the first down line. And then he saw that big play down the left sideline where he just dominated Berry at the catch point after beating him early in the route. So we kind of got vintage Gronk on those couple of plays, but for most of that game, Gronk was just a 6 pass blocker. He was not someone who was making that much of an impact. And the interesting thing will be, if he goes and plays out wide, or if he plays in the slot more and has to run more routes, how effective is he going to be over 4 quarters? Because he's been very rigid. And the other thing is, how will the Saints match up, or how will the Rams match up to him? Interesting aspect of Wade Phillips here is he's got Mark Barron playing at linebacker. Mark Barron's a safety. He was drafted as a safety high in the draft, played in Tampa Bay as a safety for years, but he got moved to linebacker because he couldn't play in space. Theoretically, you would think Mark Barron, physical skill set, coverage skills, would be the guy you'd put on Gronk, but there's a big size difference there. So I think what they'll probably do is put Talib on Gronk and then work off of that and trust Talib to work on Gronk and not anchor their coverage or have to move safeties to Gronk and try and contain Edelman, contain Hogan. You would expect Peters to go on Hogan, and then you've got, I think Nickel Roby Coleman is a soft corner there. He'll go on to Edelman. That's probably going to be the mismatch. So you're going to have to give safety help there. And it's going to be a game of, can Brady get the ball up before Donald gets him, and can Edelman get open that quickly? And to be honest, we've seen over 10, 12, 15 years, that pretty much always works for the Patriots.
Yeah. There's a couple of things, I guess, about that. Gronk's blocking was fairly important in terms of them being able to establish the run and that offensive line. And, you know, it's kind of been cobbled together with a bit of masking tape and a few freebies down in Aldi over the course of the pre-season and even a few weeks into the season. So, like, that's where the genius of Belichick and his coaching staff have kind of come to the fore. The ability to get all of your players playing well at the key moment in the season. That's the remarkable thing.
I think we've talked about this previously with Mike Munchak, where the offensive line coach is generally more important than either of your coordinators, because getting the offensive line right is such a huge key. Remember a couple of years ago where Brady went into Denver in the AFC Championship game, and Von Miller and everyone, DeMarcus Ware was still playing at that stage. They all just swarmed Brady and just got him over and over and over and over again. And then you go to that Chiefs game this week where you've got Justin Houston, you've got Dee Ford, you've got Chris Jones, a comparable defensive front, a lot of talent in that defensive front, whatever you want to say, but the rest of the defense, that defensive front can pass rush. But they didn't even touch Brady. I think they got one hitting him, and it was flagged for a 15-yard face mask. That wasn't a face mask. But when you go back to that Broncos game, that year, Dante Scarnecchia had retired. Dante Scarnecchia is the Patriots' offensive line coach, and he's a Hall of Fame coach. He's a phenomenal coach, because he takes guys like Trent Brown, who was a middling player in San Francisco, and moves him into a perfect role for him that works brilliantly with the rest of the 4 linemen he's got. So you got Scarnecchia, and he's got this perfect ability to coach guys up and make them play on the same page. But the interesting part of this is, how is Scarnecchia going to approach, and how much is he going to be involved? Because Josh McDaniels might just take over this completely. How much is he going to be involved in how they approach Donald? Because if you double team Donald, Dante Fowler has showed that he can win a little bit in the edge. Ndamukong Suh has looked better in the playoffs than he did in the regular season as a pass rusher. So the question for the Patriots is going to be, yes, Brady's going to have to get the ball out quickly and beat them, but when he can't do that, how are they going to approach Donald? Are they going to double team him? Are they going to chip him? Are they going to try and just move the pocket away from him a little bit? Are they going to try and deceive him a little bit and use the run that way? It's a very, very difficult thing because that's why Aaron Donald gets quarterback money. He impacts your whole offensive game plan and changes how you have to play the game.
If you're making the case as well, the McVay ability to see how the game is going and to, so far people have been talking about McVay in hushed tones, and yet you wonder, not going for it on 4th and 1 when it seemed like the season's on the line and, your defence is playing all right and you're going to be giving them the ball on the half-yard line or the 6-inch line. That seemed like a weird call in retrospect. Now, things work out for them because the flag doesn't get thrown, but if the flag gets thrown and they lose that game, we're all going, what the hell happened? Did he completely go away from what his stated aim of being a balls-out aggressive coach is? Or did the moment get to him? Or what was going on? The winner always gets a free pass in this situation.
Well, yeah, that's winners always our history, I suppose. But we could say the same about the Saints in the first couple of drives where they settled for field goals and short opportunities. I'm not sure McVay has ever really been that all gung-ho, I'm going for it in 4th down all the time coach. I think Doug Peterson is that kind of way. I think Matt Nagy is that kind of a way. I think McVay, he's obviously a little bit more aggressive, but we've also got to remember McVay comes from John Gruden's family of coaching. McVay has learned under Gruden and been led by Gruden and Jay Gruden, and that's not the way they are. They aren't these gung-ho. You've seen it this year with the Raiders. They're not going to do everything that the analytics suggest they do or everything the maths suggests they do. They're going to take the situational decisions and make them that way. And look, I'm kind of at the point where there aren't any right decisions here. Like you said, we kind of frame this by who won. We don't frame this by what was the right decision because the Saints end up losing and we're talking about different play calls they made and we don't care about the Rams calls. And even before that 4th down call, you can talk about Jared Goff. Again, I come back to Jared Goff. But he had that opportunity to lead Josh Reynolds into the end zone for a touchdown when he was wide open in the back of the defense after McVay had pulled the defense apart with a beautiful route combination, and he throws that ball to the back shoulder rather than leading him upfield. That, if you want to talk about specific moments, I would always go back to the execution of the field when the play works rather than the play call, because I just think the play call it's so dependent on so many different things. It's not really something you can just specifically say this is right and this is wrong. So
you're still not convinced about Goff? He's leading this team without Gurley over the last couple of weeks to the Super Bowl on the road against the Saints, who put up a fairly amazing season, and he's still only 24. Not bad.
I mean that's fine, but we're saying he's leading without Gurley. Gurley still ran for over 100 yards against the Cowboys, and C.J. Anderson ran for 130, I think it was. So it's not like he's actually carrying this team. He's been fine. He's I feel like in the NFL right now, the way we're going, and I'm doing a lot of charting of quarterbacks at this time of year, so I'm getting very, very specific. I watched Joe Flacco 250 attempts last night, which was not all that much fun. But I feel like we're at this place in the NFL right now where you've got 5 or 6 great quarterbacks, and a guy like Andrew Luck has just put himself back in that category. Then you've got 5 or 6 truly awful quarterbacks who simply can't play or can't throw the ball, and then everyone else in between is pretty much the same. Yeah. So it's how you build your offense around that.
The 5 or 6 who are truly bad, are they all going to be in the league next year, or are any of them going to survive the cull?
I mean, it kind of depends where you are situationally, because a guy like Josh Rosen probably shouldn't be, but Josh Rosen was a high first-round pick last year, and everyone is going to point to Jared Goff now and say, hey, he was truly horrendous as a rookie, and he turned it around when he got better coaching staff and a better supporting cast. So you can't really blame anyone for keeping these guys in the league, but you're also kind of looking at them and saying, hey, look at the Jaguars, they suck with Blake Bortles too long, and now they're paying for that, and we kind of think they're going to go for Joe Flacco or Eli Manning as a band-aid, and that's probably not going to work. So you don't really know what these coaches are deciding and what these front offices are deciding, and a lot of this is, hey, who did we pick originally? We have to look good. We have to look like we made the right decision.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cian, best of luck for the next week. Enjoy the charting, and we'll talk to you before the Super Bowl. Thanks a million.
Thanks, man.
It's Cian Fahey giving us some thoughts there about the Rams, the Saints, the Patriots and the Chiefs. Now, this is a bit of the show where we normally try and make you some money. How did you do last week, Sue? Who did you pick? Can't even remember.
I picked the Saints and the Patriots.
All right. It's not bad.
Well,
you would have lost money.
It wasn't good. Overall in the year, I think it worked out 25 out of 35.
That's pretty good.
70%.
So I'm in a picks pool, one of those illegal things in the States that are on these shady websites, and I got 50 out of 50%. So I had a stubbornly 50% rate of picks across the year. It's The whole point about the spread is that it's completely weighted to make loads and loads of money for the gambling firm. So I'm thinking about never backing on the spread again and just backing. If you're going to win, right? I think this team's going to win. Okay, they're 7-point favourites and the odds aren't very good, but I get my money back when they win.
Yeah.
As opposed to some shitty backdoor cover for the losing team. I'm like, well, that's bullshit.
Yeah. I don't know, like, I there was a way to do it last year where I was literally just picking the teams instead of the spreads as well. And I definitely made more money out of it that way. I definitely lost more money.
Well, the spread is specifically designed to steal your money. That's how it works.
And I went with a lot of road teams. I look back and I'm like, that wasn't the best decision ever. But I was sure about the Patriots. I'm still right about the Saints. They'll always have won that in my heart.
Well, I mean, you are. Now, so you are a Saints fan, right? Did you live in New Orleans for a while?
No, went over for, I was in the States for 3 months and it was on my...
J1?
No, it was just a travelling thing I did when I was in my 20s.
And so you've been a fan ever since?
Yeah.
This is just after Katrina?
Yes. It was actually the year that Drew Brees took over.
All right, so...
Yeah,
last year was bad, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that was pretty bad. But, at least, it was this miracle thing. Quarterback should probably have pushed him out of bounds. Would have been fine. Would have been in the Super Bowl. Yeah. But this is worse, right?
This is way worse. I mean... Okay, so there's two season ticket holders that have now taken a case against this, gone to a judge and said, this is ridiculous. Please turn this over, or just do a do-over.
Maybe they could be the third team in the Super Bowl.
Let's just forget about the Pro Bowl, just do this instead. No, it's like...
Play a third.
Yeah, it's...
4.
This is really heartbreaking, and I don't buy your whole thing about the Saints did these things in the past. If you're going to say that about every single team in the NFL, they've all done something.
Not as bad as
pretty bad. They got caught.
They got caught. Exactly. Yeah. That was their sin.
Let's be fair. That was a really, really bad no call. I'm not even going to say bad call. So I flipped on Sunday night. I saw it immediately because there was 3 calls on that play. It wasn't just the one call. And there's 2 refs looking at that.
Yeah.
The whole game was like that though. They let them play the game. A lot of like Sam was saying, it was a lot of bad calls across that game.
Well, they did what happens at big football tournaments now. Is they let stuff go, and you're okay. Well, it's good.
That's a pretty
physicality is good, but that's a face mask, and 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 they didn't get called.
Yeah,
and it's good to watch as a neutral. Yeah, but you just know that one of the teams, there's a strong possibility. It's like when in the World Cup in Brazil, the football was aggressive and brilliant, and then somebody broke Neymar's back and they were like, ooh,
that's a little bit too far.
Maybe we went a little bit too far.
Yeah. But that call just changed everything. Think about it, it's first and goal. If they got it, they would have wound down the clock, they would have got a field goal, and they would be in the Super Bowl. That is life-changing for a lot of the players on that team who have worked this hard all season. They've been a great team all season. Do the Patriots deserve to be in that Super Bowl? Absolutely not. Their regular season was 11-5. They were terrible to watch. Brady is so annoying. Did you see his videos afterwards where he's just they said I was old. They're just no. The Saints deserve to be in that Super Bowl, and it's an absolute disgrace. That is the bottom line. I'm not even watching it. I didn't even watch the Chiefs, didn't watch the Patriots.
What was with the dig at the Patriots? They did nothing to you, Sue.
But think about the teams that are in this. They're a better team consistently over the season. Consistently over the season. Yeah. The only time they were bad was when they decided to let the back.
Keep on, come on.
I can't.
Keep on.
I was so angry. I stormed out of the room. Wasn't able to watch anything. They should just turn it over. It's not right. It's just not right. That's okay. Look, I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah, any time you want to get into it, we've got an NFL podcast here, so this is specifically what it's for.
I just it's just when you look at the teams that could have been in that, I feel like the Patriots did this thing all season where they just didn't play the game. They didn't play well. They were boring to watch, and then they turn it off in the playoffs. And I almost at the point of thinking that is actually a structured design that they do.
I think so. I think
year in, year out.
I think specifically as Brady gets older, that's exactly what's going to happen.
They're just going to save themselves for the playoffs.
Yeah, they might even get another year at Gronk. They could he's going to retire, and they're they'll turn him into a blocking tight end.
Retires. For his sake, I really like Gronk actually. To be fair to Gronk,
for his sake, he'll be grand.
No, but he's been battered over this season as well. There's a couple of really bad calls around Gronk in that game as well, from many of the bits I watched back.
He's a big L unit, so he'll be grand.
But no, I'll never get over that. I actually don't think I can watch the Saints all season again next year to go through that again.
No, it's
that's
true.
2 years in a row.
It does feel to me that this is the end of that now.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen next year.
How do they come back? How does Breeze reanimate himself at this point? Is he 38?
No, he's 30. Isn't he 40?
Is he?
Oh no, 39. He just had his birthday just after.
Okay, so
divisional.
He's not Tom Brady.
And he didn't. Like Cian was saying, he didn't play brilliantly well in the last couple of games. He looked tired, actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
And some of those calls, Peyton made some really bad calls across that game. I totally agree about the Hill thing. He brought him in a third down in the first quarter.
Didn't they score a touchdown at the end of that?
What are you doing?
Didn't they?
It was a 4. He brought him back in for the fourth down, I think, because
he scores the touchdown. They throw it to him. That's the same. That's the same possession, I think.
But why are you bringing in Hill?
Look, because it's worked all year. I mean, Cian says it hasn't worked all year, but it has.
You're in a and it hasn't worked all season. It's worked towards the end of the regular season.
It's worked sporadically.
You shouldn't be doing it in a championship game where you're going to a Super Bowl. That's a crazy call. The other calls were like putting Kamara and Ingram running that running game all the way through it, and you're like, that you're just meeting a wall. Stop doing that. Call something else.
Try something else.
It was really, really frustrating to watch, and then the no call, and I was like, okay, I'm done.
Didn't even talk about the fake punch. Didn't even talk about the ball bouncing over. I was going to say Wes Welker in the Patriots game.
Oh yeah.
Julian Edelman's hand, where it's like, that touched his finger. Oh my God, it hasn't. That's no way that didn't touch his finger. Somebody busily in the background changing pixels, just doing a little bit of AI here to make sure that's not illegal. Away we go.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a lot of conspiracy theories when I came in here on Monday morning about like
illegal gambling.
And well, it wasn't illegal gambling. I was kind of like, they want the LA market. They want people to be watching these games from and they want the celebrities to turn up and go, we're supporting the Rams, and that was my conspiracy theory around everything. But I'm sorry, I've seen those refs call amazing touchdowns that you couldn't even see when it happened in live play, and they called a touchdown, and then you see it afterwards, you're like, oh yeah, that's unbelievable.
Here's my point. Here's my point. If you got it all up again, if I'm Sean Payton, I don't just accept it. I actually just wander onto the field, I throw the biggest hissy fit in the history of American sport, and I say, our team are walking off. Our team are walking off. Kick us out.
Yeah.
We've just won this game. You kick us out.
What was he supposed to do? You can't challenge that call.
I know, but
it should be a challenge of a call.
You get you go, excuse me, we control the big screen here, and I want the TV cameras to see what's on the big screen. The big screen is the guy getting decapitated. Again, back and to the right.
But sure,
to the right.
There's nothing they could do, though.
But stop the game. But what
happens when they stop the game, though?
I don't know. But what they did was nothing.
Yeah.
And what happened was they got kicked out.
Yeah.
I'm saying go full Roy Jones Jr. Sit down in the corner and say, we're not going any further. This bullshit will not start. That's what I would do.
Pretty sure he didn't think of it at the time. But watching the interviews with him afterwards, the guy, what's your man's name? Robbie Coleman, is it? He knew. He looked around for the flag. He was like, really? I'm getting away with this?
Yeah.
Peyton was losing his mind at the sideline. It was terrible.
I mean,
it's the worst thing that's ever happened in sport.
What the hell was he doing? He would have been much better letting him score the touchdown than committing.
He even said he didn't go for the, So when I went back to the studio, they were saying, play the ball. You always play the ball. He wasn't playing the ball. He was playing the player. He was trying to stop him getting to the ball. That's pass interference. That's the call. Everyone knew that happened.
You have to assume that the wide receiver was going to be smart enough to catch the ball and catch the ball and kneel.
Yeah.
So that that play clock continues.
Yeah.
But it didn't look like that. It looked like he might have been like, well, look, I just scored the game-winning touchdown and left a minute and a half on the clock for the lads anyway, but or longer as it was. So I don't know. It looks like it's something we're going to be talking about.
I won't watch that. I won't watch that Super Bowl.
You will.
No, it's a game of cheats.
You'll be back.
No, I'm not watching that Super Bowl this year.
They suck you
no
back
way.
in.
And I'm married to a Patriots husband.
Well, that would explain everything.
No.
Well, we'll be back next week. Sue might not be, but I'm sure she'll have a pick anyway. She's going to have to pick the Patriots. -3? Yeah.
No, Rams.
I don't know. Can't see it at this age.
Well,
just for the sake of it.
Calls might go for them.
There you go. Yeah. Well,
they have a young coach. It's the youngest coach in the NFL.
You want them to lose this one and win next year, so it's too early.
No, I don't want them to ever win again. I don't think you understand. They're sworn enemies.
The Rams.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. They're up there now with the Bucks and the Panthers.
It's not their fault.
And the Vikings. All of them collectively.
We'll be back next week. Good luck.